If people would just follow this one qa'idah, we would eliminate so much of the problems that are in our community. He said, if people are doing an act based upon a valid scholar's opinion, then it should not be rejected. It shouldn't be rejected. So if you have ulama that say you can do this thing, and other ulama that say you can't do it, leave people alone. They have their dalil, and leave them alone. لا سيما إن كان الخلاف في كراهية, especially if the difference of opinion is in whether or not it's makruh or not. والأفضل القيام بالمشروع والمسارعة إلى فعله, and the best is to see that it's a good thing and you should hasten to do good things. ولا يعارض ذلك بما عسى أن يعتقده جاهل بسبب جهله, and this does not contradict what sometimes an ignorant person, because of his ignorance, believes. ففي الوضوء والصلاة والصيام وسائر الوظائف المشروعة فضائل يقام بها ويثابر عليها ولم يقل أحد بتركها مخافة اعتقاد الوجوب بها. قال وقد أشكل على الناس كلام مالك في مخالفة هذا الأصل في صيام 6 من شوال، واختلفوا في توجيه قوله وكيف يستقيم لأحد أن يقيس على هذا غيره. So he said that, there are things that we do in wudu. For instance, in wudu, you're supposed to put the ina on the right side, right? And I learned that, right? But then I was with Marabt al-Hajj, and he put it on the left side. So I was like, aren't you supposed to put it on the right side? This is ignorance. Instead of saying, he put it on the right side. What's the wisdom in that? Well, I found out later that if it's a closed ina and you have to pour, then you put it on your left side. So if it's open, you put it on your right side. If it's closed, you put it on your left side. These are the adab of wudu. And that's what he's saying. You have certain things that are from the adab, also in prayer, in fasting, in doing other, breaking your fast in Egypt. It's wajib to have amruddin. By urf. It's like you haven't broken your fast if you don't have this, right? That's just the urf of the people. I'm exaggerating, obviously it's not wajib. But that's their urf. There's certain things that people do that become part of their culture. And people see it as it's just part of the culture. So there's certain things that you do. And then he says, these are things like, for instance, doing Inna anzalnahu fi laylat al-qadr after finishing wudu 3 times. That's a practice that some of the righteous do. And I found it in more than one book. Marabt al-Hajj did it. I haven't seen it like a hadith or a dalil for it. So I don't know where that came from, right? But that's something that the righteous have done. And that's what he's saying. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, he said, وَلَمْ يَقُلْ أَحَدٌ بِتَرْكِهَا, nobody said to stop it, مَخَافَةَ اعْتِقَادِ الْوُجُوبِ, out of fear that people will think it's an obligation. And then he said, now some people find it a little problematic what Malik said about going against this principle in fasting the 6 days of Shawwal. Imam Malik radiallahu anhu said about the 6 days of Shawwal, he considered it makruh to do it immediately after Ramadan. So you do Ramadan, you have the Eid, which is prohibited to fast on the Eid, and then you have these 6 days. The hadith says, "Man atba' Ramadan bi sittin min Shawwal, faka'annama sama dahr." Whoever follows Ramadan with 6 days from Shawwal, it's as if he's fasted all of the year. Obviously, because 30 days and then 6, 360. The year is 354 lunar, 365 solar. 360 is like fasting the whole year, right? So each being 10 times so it's as if he fasted the whole year. So Imam Shafi'i said the min here is the min of tab'id. It's a partitive min. And so it means you have to fast it in Shawwal. And the best is to follow it up immediately. So Imam Shafi'i said you should do it right there. in Yemen, it's almost part of Ramadan in some places in Yemen. For people who have been in Yemen, if you go to Yemen, it's like Ramadan continues for 6 days after the Eid. And they do it as a group, and they break the fast as a group. Imam Malik has something in his madhab in which sometimes he will leave something that's good out of fear that people will think it's an obligation. And so he said this is a problem, considering these things. And so this is an ishkat. Imam Malik said the 6 days of Shawwal, that min is called min al-ibtida, because you have different types of min. You have min al-bayan, وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ. Min al-Quran, all of the Quran. Min there, yubayyin jins, yubayyin al-jins. So it's min al-bayan. And then you have akaltu min al-khubzi. That's a partitive min, tab'id. I ate from the bread. I didn't eat the whole bread, I ate a portion of it. That's min al-tab'id. So min Shawwal means to fast 6 days from Shawwal. Then you have min al-ibtida. Ataytu min Makkata. I came from Mecca, beginning in Mecca. So Imam Malik said that min in the hadith is the min of ibtida. Ibtida and min Shawwal. As long as you fast beginning from Shawwal and complete those 6 days before the next Ramadan, you've fulfilled the sunnah of that hadith. That was Malik's position. Which one is right? They're both right. That's Musawwiba. And if you look at Imam Sha'rani's Misan, what he says is some do the tashdid and some do the tarkhis. And the imams, when they differ, there's murakhis and mu'azzam. So in this case, Imam Malik is the murakhis, he's giving you more leeway, and Imam Shafi'i is the mushaddid, he's narrowing the possibilities. And this is a rahmah for the ummah, ikhtilafu ummati rahmah. So he says that, and then he says, ثم قال فهذا جهالة عظيمة ما حمل من أنكره على إنكاره إلا أنه أبصر ما أمامه ولم يلتفت إلى ما خلف وراءه. He said this is a type of ignorance. So the one who rejects these things based on this, he said إلا أنه ما أبصر ما أمامه ولم يلتفت إلى ما خلف وراءه. He can see what's in front of him, but he can't see what's behind him. In other words, he doesn't حفظت شيئا وغابت عنك أشياء. You know something, but a lot of things are hidden from you. وقف على بعض مسائل في المذهب ولم يهتدي لواضح سبيله ولا شعر بوجهها ودليلها ولا علم اختلاف العلماء في أصلها ولم يعطيها من الفهم وتأمل حقها ورأى أن العمل بخلاف ما انتهى إليه فهمه فيها فظن أن لا علم إلا ما علم ولا فهم إلا دون ما فهم استحقر العامة وجهل الخاصة ورأى أنه وحده على الجادة وصار في قيامه على الناس بالنكير كما قيل إنباض بغير توتير وحاد ليس له بعير. It's an amazing statement. Really beautiful. He said, look at this ignoramus. He said, he thinks that he's got the only understanding, he's got the only dalil, that all this ikhtilaf is just from this ignorance. He didn't give it proper understanding. He didn't reflect on the haqq. He sees that anybody that goes against him, it's obviously because they have no understanding. He thinks that there's no knowledge except his knowledge. There's no understanding except his understanding. He considers the amma idiots. He considers the khassa ignoramuses. He thinks that the common people are stupid, and he thinks that the elect are ignorant. He thinks he's the only one on the road to God. So he's just criticizing everybody, condemning everybody. Like it said, he's strumming without any strings. And he's stirring the camel on without any camels. So that's plucking without strings, right? And stirring the camel on without camel. Like he's got nothing to be doing what he's doing. So this is from Ibn Lubbin. This is deep understanding. This is the only thing that would unite our ummah, is this type of understanding. And, it's like I feel like he He was in Andalusia watching the collapse of his ummah in Andalusia because they all started fighting and there were all these Muluk al-Tawaif and everything. And it's like he just put this book out to the rest of the ummah. You know, if you guys want to hold yourselves together, we couldn't do it here, but here's the way. You know, that's how I feel about this book. It's kind of like, practice this or else it's going to happen to you what happened to us. And then he says, وهذا تكلم عليه أيضا السيد مفتي تونس البرزري في المنكر الدعاء أدبار الثروات ونحو ذلك قائلا لم تسير بسيرة السلف في أن الأمر بالمعروف يكون بمعروف وقال سبحانه وتعالى فقولا له قولا لينا وهذا إذا كان المأمور به واجبا بإجماع أو المنهي عنه محرما بإجماع وأنت قد عمدت إلى مستحب جائز الترك أو مكروه جائز الفعل أو مباح وغيره خير منه وجل ذلك أو كله مختلف فيه. So he said these people, this is Imam al-Barzuli, one of the great Tunisian imams. He said these people are not following the Salaf in commanding to good because you have to command to good with a good. Look at what Allah said to Moses and Harun when they go to Pharaoh. Speak gently to him. And that's Pharaoh. So what about this poor Muslim? Right? How are you going to command him to good? And he said, in this, we're talking about things that are wajib by ijma', they're obligations by consensus of the ummah, or they're prohibited by consensus. These guys are looking at things that are recommended that you don't have to do, or makruh that you can do, or mubah where you could do something better than it. And most of these things are مختلفي. We have difference of opinion about them. ثم ذكر عن هذا الذي هو يتحدث معه أنه كبر هذه الأشياء وصيرها مناكير وقال قصاراها الاستحباب والكراهة أو الإباحة على اختلاف فيها أو في بعضها تركت أو فعلت لموجب قابل للاستحباب والكراهة أو الإباحة وأخذ فيها بغير مذهب مالك المرجح وجرى عليه عمل الناس من غير نكير. So he says that these things were mentioned, that he's making a big deal out of these things and turning them into manakir. And the furthest you could say about it is istihbab, it's recommended, or it's makruh, or it's ibaha, based on the differences of opinion, leaving them or doing them, based on whether they're encouraged or not recommended or permissible. And then they take, other than the madhab of Malik, which was the madhab that they were encouraged to follow in that country, and they وَجَرَ عَلَيْهِ عَمَلُ النَّاسِ مِنْ غَيْرِ نَكِيرٍ, and it's what people practice without nobody telling them not to do it. سيأتي أن أمر الحسبة ليس بالهوينة. You're going to learn that this hisbah, this regulatory mechanism in our sharia of calling to good, enjoining good, and forbidding evil is not an easy thing. انظر النصوص الصريحة بالنهي في القرآن والسنة في مثل هذه الأمور أعني مما هو وارد على ما في ملك الإنسان أنه نهي أدب أو إرشاد أو نهي تحريم حسب ما أبينه في المقام السادس قصار أمره إن لم يكن النهي عن فاضل لأفضل منه أنه مكروه والمكروه من قبيل الجائز. So he said that look at these clear texts about prohibition in the Quran and the Sunnah in many affairs. And I'm talking about, for instance, what concerns a man's personal property. It's a nahyu adban wa irshad. For instance, there's a nahi of some of the ulama put of having a wasiyah for ahl al-dhimma, right? So people that aren't from your own religious community, you don't give them things in your will. That nahi is adab and irshad, that there's people that you should be helping before because al-aqrabun awla bil ma'ruf, but it's not a prohibition. So if somebody did it, you can't make inkar of them and say you can't do that. And then he said, وَانظُرْ فِيمَا هُوَ أَعْظَمُ قول ابن شاس. Look at something even greater, what Ibn Shas said. لو رفع إرقاض النكاح امرأة زوجت نفسها بغير ولي فقال لا أجيزه أن هذا ليس بحكم. قال الإمام ابن عرفة مقتضى هذا أن لغيره بعده أن ينقضه، والظاهر أنه لا يجوز للثاني نقضه، لأن قول الأول لا أجيزه حكم منه بأنه مكروه، والكراهة أحد أقسام الشرع الخمسة يجب رعي كل حكم منها ولازمه، وحكم مكروه عدم نقضه بعد وقوعه. It's a really important point here. He said, look at something even bigger than these other things about marriage. If somebody comes to a judge and says this woman married herself without a wali, and he says, La ujizuhu, I don't permit it. This is not a legal ruling from him. قال الإمام Ibn Arafah said, the meaning of this is that it's not permitted for somebody to rescind that marriage after him saying that. Why? Because what he's saying is, it's not permitted in my madhab, right? And what he's saying is it's makruh. والكراهة أحد أقسام الشرع الخمسة يجب رعي كل حكم منها ولازمي. So you have to follow every hukum and what follows from that legal ruling. And the hukum of makruh is عدم نقضه بعد وقوعه. You can't, if something's makruh, you can't rescind it after it's happened. So if you have a contract and there's something makruh in it, even though you did something that was better that you shouldn't have done, you don't rescind it. So a woman in the Hanafi madhab is permitted to marry herself without a wali. She's her own wali. تتولى أمرها. She's her own wali. And the hadith that there's no valid marriage without a wali does not apply based on that understanding. And so even though Malik said she has to have a wali, Abu Hanifa said she can be her own wali. And so in that case, if the marriage happened, you don't rescind it. قال Ibn al-Arabi, التوبة من المكروه مستحبة, that it's encouraged to make tawbah from a makruh. Remember, he's talking about maqam al-jid. He's talking about the highest maqam still. So these people make tawbah from the makruh. I mean, one of them said, you don't have ma'rifah of Allah until you make tawbah from your khawatir. Because these are people that they don't allow bad thoughts into their minds. They control their thoughts. انظر إذا كانت الكراهة بترك فاضل لأفضل وربما يحتسب المحتسب فيترك المحتسب عليه ما فيه فضل ولا يترقى لأفضل. So look at, if it's makruh, if they should have left it for something better, the muhtasib, the regulator, the one calling to good and forbidding evil, he can leave that person in what he's doing and consider it better. Like Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah mentions in I'lam al-Muwaqqi'een that he was with Ibn Taymiyyah and they passed by some of the Mongols and they were drinking alcohol. And he said, shouldn't we condemn them? He said, listen, leave them doing this because they'll be out raping and pillaging. It's better they're doing this than doing that. This is it. Imam Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah saw this himself. And he said this is from his fiqh. Because قِلَّةُ الْإِثْمِ خَيْرٌ مِّن كَثْرَتِهِ. A little bit of evil is better than a lot of evil. So it's better they're doing that than they're doing something else that's worse. The same is about chess. People playing chess. In another one, they said, why don't you condemn them? He said, this preoccupies them from backbiting. Let them play their game. Because if you take that away from them, they'll just sit around talking about bad people. This is the hukum of the hisbah of zalim li nafsihi, not of the higher people.